All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Looking forward to getting into today's Friday review. A lot of reader questions here today. I got one study that was sent in by one of our listeners or readers, however you want to look at it, and also one from our IHPs on maybe a better alternative to the DEXA scan, which after the age of about 50 years old for most women, you want to start to look at bone density, even really after, let's call it age 40, whether this is safe or not, whether you need to worry about the radiation. We're going to go through all of that, plus two tremendous research studies today. One, believe it or not, they may have solved baldness and hair loss. I mean, unbelievable. I'm going to give you the excerpt today. We're going to do a whole show on this next week because it is so groundbreaking and it's backed by Google-based research, meaning like they've got their research agency funding a lot of these studies that show promise. It just had about $16-17 million put into this research. I'm going to share more of that with you here today. And then also one on exactly how many steps. You know, I know I talk about steps all the time in walking, but also why max VO2 may not be as important as literally just walking. I've talked about this now for years, but it seems to be true. So let's check it out here today on the show. Before we get into the research and the product reviews and all those amazing things, if you missed any of last week's show, they're all at stephencabral.com/podcasts. 3468 was Monday's show on creating your own what are called OKRs in your life to create, well, I would say more growth, more happiness, more contentment, and absolutely pushing your potential on life. So definitely check that out. It's a great way just to keep things simplified in your life on achieving your goals. Tuesday was the deadly mistake executive athletes keep making. This is a big one. I mean, it really is. If you listen to yesterday's show on blood pressure, I talked kind of about like over optimization. This is happening every single day. And I see, especially men, I see too many men dying in their mid to later 50s when it just doesn't have to be the case. And I share with you why this is happening, how it's happening, and just to make sure that you or one of your loved ones are not one of those people. On Wednesday, we went over what wins, intermittent fasting, the 4-3, versus daily caloric restriction for overall weight loss. Check out that show, some interesting research. And then yesterday's show was on exercise plus this decreased blood pressure faster. So fascinating show, quick show, but I wanted to share the research with you that adding just 15 more minutes of something actually quite relaxing after your weight training workouts is able to decrease your blood pressure by what seems to be a minimum of 8 points, and really just after 8 weeks, that's it. So who knows what that will expand to over the amount of 12 months. I would love you to maybe begin to implement it in your own life. All right, let's dive now into the show. First, we're going to start with a product review. I'm going to keep this short. I'm going to keep it sweet. There are a lot of people who use DEXA scans to look at bone density as well as body composition. But there's been maybe growing concern around the amount of radiation that is given off during a DEXA scan. And what I wanted to share with you is that I just went deep into the research because I said, okay, what else is there besides a DEXA scan to look at bone density? And it's not great. It's ultrasound really type technology. It's not strong. I'm not saying that you should do a DEXA scan every year, but what I looked at was it's in micro sieverts. That's basically the units of measurement. So whenever you hear me say 20 to 40 or things like that, those are just basically microsieverts of radiation. All right. So let me just share with you this, that, you know, a daily exposure of radiation in our natural environment with sunlight and just natural exposure is about 10 microsieverts. Okay. If you were to get a chest x-ray, and then there's varying levels on mammograms, you're getting about 100 microsieverts, right? So it's quite a large amount. If you were to take a 6-hour flight from Boston to LA, you're getting about 20 to 40 microsieverts. A DEXA scan is about 1 to 5 microsieverts. Okay, so typical day, background radiation, about 10. DEXA scan, about 1 to 5, right? So it's quite low. Airplane flight, 20 to 40 microsieverts. Chest x-ray, much larger amount, 100 all at once, like 10 days of irradiation all at once, right? So that's why it's a little bit more severe. So what I would say is this: there is no, what I've found to be comparable one for one, but if you're doing this once every year, once every 5 years, like I don't think you need to check your bone density every year. I certainly, unless there's a reason to. So here's the thing. I don't think it's a lot of radiation. It's certainly, it looks like it's about 1/10 to maybe 50% of a day's worth. And for the stats that it's going to lend you, I think it may be worth it if you're at an age where you need to start to look at your bone density. Okay, so I wanted to keep it at that. I wanted to answer that question. I'll always give you the unbiased answer. Of course, I don't want any extra exposure to radiation if I don't have to. I'm someone that keeps everything in airplane mode. I'm someone that doesn't keep my phone on my body, especially if I'm not out. So it's all of those things. And so again, I just wanted to share that with you, that I would feel comfortable saying to my mom, hey, once every 3 years to 5 years, get a DEXA scan, no issue at all. Okay. Now, if I find there to be an issue in the future, of course, I'm going to share that with you, but that is the latest radiation that we see. And usually these things go down in radiation, not up. That's also the good news, right? So mammograms, I've got a whole show on better and safer alternatives to mammograms. Again, not giving you medical advice, but that's because there's way more radiation and way more risk. As mammograms, which they have started to go down, we can start to reassess then safety and efficacy at that time. But of course, my recommendations because you've listened to the previous shows. If you haven't listened to that show, I'll link up my mammogram show at today's show notes, which is episode 3472. So just head on over to stephencabral.com/3472. All right, research study one for the day. I mean, these are, in my opinion, both amazing research studies. Let's get after it. This one is on, and it's a good amount. So a recent groundbreaking study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine and combined with NIH and the University of Oxford, so really reputable universities, they looked at the risk of developing 13 different types of cancer. Then they tracked 85,000 individuals. Then they looked at their step count. What they found was that walking at least, I have an at least number, is 7,000 steps. But ideally, 9,000 steps led to a dramatic reduction in your risk for colon cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer, stomach cancer, kidney cancer, myeloid leukemia, multiple myeloma, cancers of the head and neck, lung cancer, bladder cancer, and rectal cancer. Pretty amazing. They found that walking helps to regulate inflammation and metabolic processes, which are often dysregulated in cancer. So let's go over now specific study findings. I wanted to give you just much more than the basic synopsis, because we know that 7,500 to 10,000 steps per day reduces all-cause mortality by somewhere around 23% to 28%. Okay, amazing. But again, this was literally, it was literally just published on March 26th, 2025. So just a few months ago when this show came out, and it showed a 11% decrease in cancer, all those cancers that I spoke about, at 7,000 steps a day, and a 16% lower risk at 9,000 steps per day. Nothing else added besides that. The median age in this study was 63. And then it was tracked, participants were tracked for an average of 5.8 years. So as I said, I think that this is pretty impressive. The highest activity group had a 26% lower cancer incidence than the least active group. All right, so what does that also mean? Because that's a big number, 26% reduction in cancer. So just by walking, by the way, it was more steps. The more steps you were considered to be in the most active group. So that would be over 10,000 steps, definitely over the 9,000, right? So let's give just a couple more statistics here. The 13,000 steps, the increase in volume from 7,000 to 9,000. What does that exactly mean? It means about 20 more minutes of walking per day for the average individual. So I just want you to know, we're not talking about monumental asks, and then I'm going to break down for what I see in my practice. Okay, last part I wanted to share with you was, because I thought this was a really impressive, let me just read the notes specifically to you. The study tracked steps counts measured for 1 week, and then it's looked for each week after that. The follow-up was 5.8 years. It looked at lifetime valuation of cancer. Let's see. There was no official press release yet, but it's recorded on the NIH's official website and will be most likely published into PubMed soon. It's also in the British Journal of Sports Medicines there. And what it found, though, is there wasn't necessarily a correlation with the effort. It was in total movement. So activity, it's called activity intensity or pace of vigor, did not add significant protection once total daily steps were accounted for. Total movement seemed to matter more than effort level. That's what I wanted to talk about just for a moment before I get into the last study. So a colleague of mine who is, brilliant, I have a lot of admiration for them. One of their biggest things with longevity is improving max VO2. And maybe I'll do a whole show on this, but I have to share with you, I don't see that play out in real life. I see great studies on max VO2. I'm currently trying to continue to improve my max VO2. I set out about a year ago to raise my max VO2 by 10 points. I'm up 6 points. I'm really going to push hard for those last 4 points because that's a goal of mine. And there's almost like no downside to a stronger max VO2. But, when I'm in Maine, especially for the summer, I'm surrounded by neighbors in their 80s and 90s, okay? I have clients in my practice in their 80s and 90s, like when they come into the practice. And I'll tell you this, like let's just take, a lot of the people that I see and that I've studied as well and that I talk with, I've actually, I've had conversations with Dan Buettner of the Blue Zones and the people that he meets with. All the people that I know in their 90s, none of them work on max VO2. None of them have a formal exercise program. And none of them are, specifically following like a lot of like longevity-based plans. But what they are doing is they are following a lot of the Blue Zones-based tenets. And they're walking every day. That's their exercise. And or they are gardening. They don't eat a lot of food, right? So they're not eating massive amounts of food. They actually do take some vitamins, the people that I know in omegas. I'm not like, that's just what I'm asking them. I give no advice to my neighbors. They don't ask for my advice. I don't want to give them any advice. I want to learn. And I also talk with their kids, and their kids are in their 60s, right? And so I'm asking these things. What I'm here to share with you, though, is that no one I know in their 80s and really 90s has done any type of real formal max VO2 or any type of intense training for over 20 years, 25 years. And these people are living well into their 90s. So, I have to ask myself, is activity the thing that matters more, or is it max VO2? I would say this: get out and walk. Get out and walk. If you can do some max VO2 training, amazing, but get out and walk. 10,000 steps a day. It's still, people like, 4,500 steps is good. It seems to be 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day. And if you're able to work up to it, again, you just want to work up to it. My highest recommendation is to work up to 9,000 to 10,000 steps a day. I can't recommend that enough. I've gone over so many studies. It's so boring, but it is the thing. You add sauna to it too? Amazing. Does sauna take any real effort besides sitting in there? No, it's just the time. But again, another amazing thing that we know for longevity. So instead of doing sprint training, which you might not even want to do, you don't need to do that before you get in your 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day, at least 6 days a week, right? And also get in sauna. Then you can think about all the fancier things. And again, I do the fancier things. I love them. I talk about them. And we teach them in high performance health. But walk. I know it's boring. Walk. It's probably the most important thing for your health. It really is. All right, research number 2. This is again, I'm going to probably do this once a month, twice a month on Fridays when I see a study that is groundbreaking or just so unique. I'm going to do a whole show on it. So whole show coming soon, but here's the excerpt. And then you can go and you can say, I don't want to wait until next week. Let me dive into it now. Great. The research will be at stephencabral.com/3472. So, again, this is such a teaser. Hair loss may soon be a thing of the past. It might be ancient history thanks to UCLA's new topical cream. And again, if you want to look it up, it is PP405. And what it does, it actually awakens dormant hair follicles. That means literally men or women, but mainly men, may have gone bald a decade ago. It wakes those hair follicles up, and it does so in just 7 days. Now, that's the sensational part. There's more to it than that, and I'm going to go in depth next week. But the truth is, it actually works. And unlike finasteride or Propecia or minoxidil, what it works on is at a metabolic level. So it blocks a key protein that keeps hair follicle stem cells in hibernation. I've done a whole hair show. Basically, there is a hibernation state, there's a hair loss state, there's a hair growth state. There's technically 4, but we usually look at 4 different states. And once these hair follicles can be freed from that hibernation-based state, it can begin to improve hair growth, and actually pretty quickly. So let me give you a couple excerpts. A small molecule, and yes, P405 is a drug. So just kind of keep in mind, if you're 100% against pharmaceuticals, I totally get it. This one does not seem to end up in the bloodstream. I just wanted to share that with you, but I'm going to share far more details next week. But again, pretty impressive technology. It's out of the lab of UCLA's William Lowry, Heather Christolf, and Michael Jung, and it is with Pelage Pharmaceuticals. But again, much more to come, and it has backing from Google Ventures. They raised about 16 to 17 million in 24-25. And here's part of the best part. It's in phase 2A clinical trials. It'll be hopefully moving to phase 3 soon. It was done with 78 adults, and I'll just tell you this, that they saw 20% hair growth and a 20% increase in hair density, the thickness, the amount of hair follicles there by week 8. Again, much more to come, but let me share with you how much hair density the placebo group saw. 0. So this is a remarkable, clean study that shows the group that gets the PP405, 20% just in 8 weeks. Hair density, right? Thickness of the hair and hair growth over basically like a square inch unit versus 0% in the placebo. And it's showing new hair growth even in bald areas that were presently bald before. So as I said, much more to come. It will move into phase 3 soon. And on next week's show, I'll share with you when it will most likely hit the market. But just as a pretty remarkable study, I had to share that with you here today, because once most people reach their 30s, 40s, they're looking to maybe regrow a little bit of hair, improve overall hair thickness. I'll talk about whether it's safe for both men and women or just men next week as well, so stay tuned. But hopefully this was helpful. All the original research will be at stephencabral.com/3472. And then, of course, look for next week's show that will go much more in depth. But of course, I always want to be conscious of your time. That is it for today's show. And I will be back tomorrow with our first Cabral host call of the weekend, answering all of our community's questions. Take care, buddy. Have an amazing rest of the week, and I'll talk with you in a moment. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.